Maya had worked at the local school for almost 10 years. She wasn't a teacher or an office assistant or even someone who helped with students' homework. She was the cleaner. Every morning, she arrived before anyone else. She swept the floors, emptied the trash bins, wiped down the chalkboards, and cleaned the bathrooms. No one paid much attention to her. She moved quietly through the hallways, always smiling politely, but never saying much. She dressed in plain clothes and always wore her hair tied back. Some people didn't even know her name. They just called her the cleaner lady. The teachers were often too busy to notice her, and the students barely looked at her when they walked past. A few kind ones smiled or said hello, but most just saw her as part of the background. Maya never complained. She didn't mind the silence. She seemed content with her small world. She brought her own tea in a small thermos and sat quietly in the break room during lunchtime. She listened more than she spoke. Some of the younger teachers would even joke around her, assuming she wouldn't understand or care. But Maya always just smiled. One Monday morning, something unusual was happening in the school. Posters were everywhere. Music appreciation week. The music teacher, Mr. Hawkins, had organized a week of events to inspire the students. There would be performances, workshops, and even a small concert on Friday. Mr. Hawkins had arranged for a professional pianist to visit the school and perform a very difficult piece of music, Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, he had told everyone it would be the highlight of the week. The students were excited, even the teachers were curious. The grand piano in the auditorium had been cleaned and polished, waiting for the big moment. But on the day of the performance, something went wrong. Just 30 minutes before the pianist was supposed to arrive, Mr. Hawkins received a phone call. The pianist had gotten into a car accident, not serious, but he wouldn't be able to make it. Mr. Hawkins went pale. The auditorium was already filling up with students and staff. They were all expecting something special. The head principal gave him a look. "You better figure something out," she said, half joking, half serious. Mr. Hawkins rushed to the auditorium stage and whispered to a few fellow teachers that the pianist wasn't coming. Panic started to spread among them. Students were getting noisy. They had been promised a professional performance, and now there was nothing. A few teachers tried to calm the crowd, suggesting they'd play some music videos or perhaps reschedule. But the mood was already slipping, and that's when one young teacher, Miss Dale, made a sarcastic comment. She pointed to the back of the auditorium, where Maya stood quietly with her mop and bucket. "Maybe she can play," Miss Dale said. Laughing, a few nearby students chuckled. Another teacher added, "Yeah, why not? Give us a show." Everyone turned toward Maya, expecting her to smile nervously and shake her head. But she didn't. She just looked at them with calm eyes. Mr. Hawkins, feeling embarrassed by the chaos, tried to smooth over the moment. "Come on, folks. Let's be respectful," he said. But then, seeing no other option, he looked at Maya and asked gently, "Would you like to try? Just a few notes for fun?" Maya didn't say anything for a second. The room was full of eyes. Teachers, students, even the janitor who usually worked in the gym had stopped to watch. Finally, Maya nodded slowly. She wiped her hands on a cloth. She kept in her apron, walked toward the stage, and sat down at the grand piano. There was some whispering. A few students rolled their eyes. Some laughed quietly. No one expected anything impressive. She was just the cleaner after all. What could she possibly do? Maya took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. Her hands looked worn and rough, hands that had held brooms and scrubbed tiles for years. But the moment her fingers touched the keys, something changed. The auditorium seemed to take a breath with her. She began to play. At first it was soft, like a whisper, simple. Melody floated into the room. Then it grew stronger. Her hands moved faster. The notes became complex, layered deep. It was Rachmaninoff. Not just any part. She was playing the hardest section, one that even professional pianists struggled with. Her fingers danced across the piano with ease, as if she'd done it 1,000 times. The music was full of emotion, sadness, strength, beauty. The laughter stopped. The whispers ended. Students leaned forward in their seats, wide-eyed. Teachers stared in shock. Mr. Mr. Hawkins froze, mouth slightly open. The sound filled the entire auditorium. It was powerful. It was flawless. It was unforgettable. Even the principal, who had come to see what the noise was about, stood near the door without saying a word. Everyone was listening. No one could believe it. This simple woman, who mopped their floors every day, was performing one of the greatest piano pieces in the world and doing it better than anyone they had ever heard. Maya didn't look up. She didn't smile. She just played. Her face was calm, but her music spoke for her. It told a story of pain, love, sacrifice, and dreams. It was like she was speaking through the piano, saying things no words ever could. When she finished, there was silence. Total silence. No one moved. No one clapped. They were too stunned. Then suddenly, one student stood up and started clapping. Another followed. And another. Soon, the entire room was on their feet, clapping loudly, some even cheering. Maya stood up slowly, nodded politely, and stepped back. Mr. Hawkins rushed toward her. Where did you learn that?" he asked, his voice filled with disbelief. Maya gave a small smile. "I used to play a little," she said simply, and turned to leave. But the questions had just begun. The music teacher quickly searched her name on his phone. He typed Maya pianist and paused. What he found made him freeze. There were old newspaper articles, faded concert posters, and black and white photos. They showed a young girl Maya seated at a grand piano, performing in front of large audiences. Headlines said things like, "Child piano prodigy and future of classical music." Videos showed her performing in large concert halls, her fingers flying across the keys even at a young age. The room buzzed with whispers as more people found the same information. Maya was not just talented, she was once famous. A prodigy, star, but no one knew. Not for years. She had hidden it all. The students followed her out into the hallway, asking questions. Maya remained quiet, only saying, "It was a long time ago." But her eyes said more. They held memories, some joyful, some painful. That day changed everything. For Maya, for the school, for the students who had laughed at her, for the teachers who thought she was just a cleaner. She had reminded everyone that greatness can hide in the most unexpected places. That behind quiet eyes and gentle smiles, there can be powerful stories waiting to be told. And most of all, she reminded them of the magic of music. The auditorium was still buzzing with shock and amazement after Maya walked off the stage. Students stood around whispering to each other. Some looked at the piano like it had come alive. Others kept glancing at the hallway, where Maya had quietly disappeared after her performance. No one could believe what had just happened. Just moments ago, she was the woman who cleaned the floors, the one nobody really noticed. Now she was someone else, someone extraordinary. Mr. Hawkins, the music teacher, was still trying to process it all. He kept replaying the music in his head, the speed of her fingers, the emotion behind every note. He had taught music for years, but he had never seen anything like that. Maya hadn't just played the piece, she had brought it to life. He stood near the piano, eyes still on the keys, and whispered to himself that wasn't just talent, that was mastery. Students began, talking excitedly. "Did you see how fast her hands moved?" One boy said, "She didn't even look nervous." Another added. A girl near the front row said, "It felt like the piano was crying and laughing at the same time." Everyone had something to say, but all of them agreed on one thing. They had witnessed something unforgettable. The principal came to the front of the auditorium, raising her hand to calm the crowd. "Students," she began, her voice shaking a little, "what you just heard was a very special moment. And I want you all to take a minute to think about what it means." She paused, looking around the room. Sometimes we think we know who people are, just by their job, their clothes, or their silence. But people carry stories hidden inside them. And today, Maya shared a piece of hers. There was a respectful silence for a moment. Then she added, "Let's give her one more." Round of applause. The room filled with clapping again, this time more thoughtful and full of respect. Meanwhile, Maya had gone back to her small room near the back of the school, the one where she kept her cleaning supplies. She sat on the little wooden bench, her hands still slightly shaking. Not from fear, but from the emotion of playing again after so many years. She stared at her fingers, remembering the feel of the piano keys under them. It had been so long. Her mind went back to the last time she had played like that, in a concert hall. Wearing a long black gown, her father sitting in the front row with proud tears in his eyes. That was a different life. A life she had buried. There was a soft knock on the door. Maya looked up. It was Mr. Hawkins. "May I come in?" he asked gently. She nodded. He stepped inside and sat across from her. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then he smiled. "That was beyond words, Maya. I've never heard anything like it." She looked down and gave a small smile. "It's been a long time. Didn't you ever tell anyone?" he asked. Maya shrugged. "No one asked." He laughed softly. "That's not fair. People should have known. You could have taught here, performed. You could have inspired so many." She sighed. "Sometimes life takes a turn you don't expect. I had to stop. I didn't want to remember." Mr. Hawkins didn't press her. He just nodded. "Well, I hope you'll think about playing again, even just for the students. What you did today, it changed how they see everything." Just then, another knock came at the door. This time it was a group of students holding flowers they had picked from the school garden. "These are for you," a girl said shyly. "You're amazing." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She took the flowers gently and whispered, "Thank you." Later that day, word had spread beyond the school. Some parents who had attended the performance started talking about it on social media. Someone had secretly recorded a part of her, playing on their phone, and uploaded it. By evening, the video had thousands of views. People were commenting things like, "Who is she? And why isn't she famous?" Some even thought it was fake. But those who had been there knew it was real. Mr. Hawkins found old videos online showing a younger Maya. One clip showed her at age 12, performing on a big stage in Russia. She looked exactly the same, just younger, calm, focused, graceful. Her fingers flew over the keys with the same ease as she had shown today. Another video showed her at 16, winning a European music competition. The headlines called her the future of classical music. The teachers gathered in the staff room to watch the clips. One of them whispered, "She was a star." Another said, "What happened to her?" No one knew the full story. The next morning when Maya came to work, things were different. Students waved to her. Some smiled shyly. One little boy even asked for her autograph. The staff greeted her with more respect. Even the principal invited her to sit with them for lunch. But Maya stayed quiet, staying true to her humble nature. Mr. Hawkins approached her again. "Would you consider playing for the school concert on Friday?" he asked. Maya hesitated. She wasn't sure she wanted to go back to that world. Too many memories. Too much pain. But then she remembered the way. The students had looked at her, the spark in their eyes, the inspiration they had felt. She finally nodded. "Just one piece," she said. By Friday, the auditorium was packed. Not just students and teachers, but parents, local reporters, and even a few former musicians who had seen the video online. Everyone wanted to see the mysterious pianist for themselves. Backstage, Maya sat quietly. Her hands rested gently on her lap. She wasn't nervous, not this time. Something inside her had changed. The music she had buried deep inside was returning, not as a burden, but as a gift. She realized that by hiding her talent, she had also hidden a part of her heart. When it was her turn, she walked slowly onto the stage. The lights were bright, but the applause that greeted her was warm and full of respect. She sat at the piano, took a breath, and began to play. This time, it wasn't Rachmaninoff. It was a simpler piece, one full of emotion, gentle and beautiful. It spoke of her journey, her silence, her rediscovery. The notes filled the room with peace. And as she played, she smiled not for the audience, but for herself. When she finished, the room stood in silence again. But this time it wasn't. Because they were surprised, it was because they were moved. The applause that followed was soft at first, then loud and long. Some people wiped tears from their eyes. Others just stood, amazed by her grace. That night, Maya walked home under the stars, carrying the small bouquet of flowers a student had given her. She She felt lighter. For the first time in years, the music inside her didn't feel like a memory. It felt alive again. After Maya's performance at the school concert, the whole town began talking about her. People who had known her only as the quiet cleaner were now seeing her in a completely different light. Her name was on everyone's lips: teachers, students, parents, even people in nearby towns. The video of her playing the piano had gone viral. Articles were being written about the unknown school cleaner who stunned everyone with her piano genius. News reporters began visiting the school, asking for interviews, but Maya quietly avoided the attention. She didn't want to be on television. She didn't want to be famous. She just wanted to live her life in peace. But curiosity grew. People wanted to know more. Where did she learn to play like that? Why had she never told anyone? And why would someone with such talent choose to mop floors in silence? The answers started coming slowly. Mr. Hawkins, the music teacher, spent time researching and found more about her past. One day, he sat with Maya in the break room and gently asked, "Would you be willing to tell me your story? I think it would help people understand. They want to know you, not just your music." Maya was quiet for a while, and she nodded. She began with her childhood. She was born in a small town in Eastern Europe where her parents discovered her love for music at the age of 4. They had an old upright piano in their house, and one day her mother found her pressing the keys, trying to copy a song she had heard on the radio, not just the melody, but the rhythm too. Her fingers moved in ways no one had taught her. She was a natural. Her parents were shocked and amazed. They saved money to buy her piano lessons. Her first teacher immediately knew Maya was special. Within a year, she was playing pieces that students normally took years to learn. By the time she was 10, she had already won several regional competitions. At 12, Maya was invited to join a famous music academy in Moscow. Her parents were proud, but nervous. It meant sending their daughter far from home. But Maya was determined. She loved the piano more than anything. Playing music felt like breathing. It was the one place where she felt completely free. Her life at the academy was intense. She practiced for hours every day. Her teachers pushed her hard, expecting perfection. And she delivered. She began performing across Europe. People called her a prodigy. She was on magazine covers. Her name became well known in the classical music world, but with success came pressure. She barely saw her family. Her father became sick. Her mother tried to keep it from her, but eventually Maya found out. 16, she returned home during a school break and saw how bad things really were. Her father was weak, her mother exhausted. They couldn't afford proper care. Maya faced a difficult choice: stay and help her family, or return to the academy and continue her rising career. In the end, love won. She left her dream behind and stayed home. She found small jobs to earn money, teaching piano, working at a bookstore, even cleaning houses. Her father passed away 2 years later. Her mother followed not long after. By then, Maya's opportunities had disappeared. The world had forgotten the prodigy. A younger generation had taken her place. She moved to a new country, hoping to start over. She didn't bring her piano. It was too painful. Every note reminded her of what she had lost. She tried to forget that part of her life. She worked in shops, restaurants, and finally found a job at the school as a cleaner. It was quiet, simple work. No one expected anything from her. That's how she wanted it, until the day they asked her to play, as Maya shared her story with Mr. Hawkins. Tears came to his eyes. "I can't believe you gave up everything," he whispered. "I didn't give up," Maya said gently. "I chose something more important at the time." Mr. Hawkins looked at her with deep respect. "Would you let me tell your story? The world should hear it. Maybe it will help someone else who feels forgotten." Maya thought for a long moment. Then she nodded again. The next week, a small article appeared in the local newspaper. It was titled, "The Hidden Star Among Us." It told the story of Maya Kovalenko, once a child prodigy, now a humble school cleaner, who had played one of the most difficult piano pieces in the world and left an entire auditorium speechless. The article was written with care, sharing her journey with dignity. People who read it were deeply moved. Many sent letters to the school, Some shared their own stories of lost dreams and quiet sacrifices. One elderly man wrote, "I, too, played violin in my youth, but gave it up for my family. Maya reminded me of that joy." Another letter came from a mother who said, "Thank you, Maya, for showing my daughter that it's never too late to be yourself." But the biggest surprise came a few days later. A famous music academy from the city sent a representative to meet Maya. They had seen the video, read her story, and wanted to offer her a chance to teach at their school. Not as a cleaner, not as a part-time helper, but as a master pianist, a mentor. When they met her, they were shocked by her humility. She didn't wear expensive clothes. She didn't speak with arrogance. She simply smiled and said, "I'm honored, but I've been away from that world for a long time." The academy head replied, "Your music speaks louder than any words. You still have so much to give." Maya didn't answer immediately. Went home and sat alone that night. She lit a small candle and pulled out an old photograph of her parents. "Would you be proud of me?" she whispered. The candle flickered as if replying. She thought about the students at school, the way their eyes had lit up during her performance. She thought about the little girl who had given her flowers and the boy who had asked her to teach him. Slowly she realized that music was still part of her soul. No matter how long she had hidden it, it had never left. The next day Maya accepted the offer, but with one condition. She wanted to continue working at the local school on weekends, teaching music to children who couldn't afford lessons. Academy agreed. When news of her decision spread, the students were thrilled. They now called her Miss Maya, and many signed up for her weekend piano classes. She began teaching them with patience and love, just as her first teacher had taught her. Some of them showed great promise, while others simply enjoyed playing. But all of them felt inspired. One day a student asked her, "Miss Maya, do you regret giving up your concerts?" She paused before answering. "No," she said. "Sometimes life gives you different stages to perform on. I didn't stop being a musician. I just changed the audience." The boy smiled, not fully understanding, feeling the truth in her words. As weeks passed, Maya's music filled not just the auditorium, but the hearts of everyone around her. Her story became a reminder that greatness doesn't disappear. It waits. And sometimes it returns in the quietest, most unexpected ways. Maya's life had changed in a way she never expected. For years, she had lived quietly, working as a cleaner in the school, keeping her head down, not expecting much from the world. But now, people looked at her differently. Students smiled brightly when they saw her. Teachers greeted her with kindness and respect. Even strangers from the town stopped her to say, "I saw your video. You play beautifully." For Maya, this sudden attention was strange. She wasn't used to it. But somewhere deep in her heart, she felt something warm, something that had been missing for a long time. She didn't speak much about how she felt, but her actions said everything. She started coming to school earlier than usual, not just to clean, but to spend a few minutes with the old piano in the auditorium, the same piano where she had played that unforgettable piece. She would sit down quietly, close her eyes, and let her fingers play gentle melodies. Sometimes it was classical music. Sometimes it was something she created herself. The music was soft, beautiful, and full of emotion. A few times, students passing by would stop and listen, hiding behind the door so they wouldn't disturb her. "Mr. Hawkins noticed the change in her. You're not hiding anymore," he told her one day. Maya gave a small smile. "Maybe the music stopped hiding first," she replied. The music academy in the city had already arranged a special welcome concert for Maya. They wanted to celebrate her return to the world of music. Posters with her name were placed in theaters. And online, said Maya Kovalenko, "The lost virtuoso returns." Her story had touched thousands of people. Many wanted to hear her play again, not just because of her talent, but because of the way she had carried herself with humility and strength. Maya was nervous about the concert. It had been years since she had played for a large audience. She wasn't sure if she could handle the pressure. But then she remembered the faces of the students who watched her with so much hope. She remembered the little girl who said, "When I grow up, I want to be like you." Maya knew she couldn't walk away from this now. It's not for herself, but for them. The day of the concert arrived. The city theater was filled. People from many towns had come. Some carried flowers. Others brought old programs from her childhood performances, hoping for her autograph. Reporters stood outside with cameras. Inside, the lights dimmed, and the host stepped onto the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host said, "tonight, we welcome someone very special. A pianist whose hands once moved audiences to tears, then disappeared from the world. She gave up her dreams for love, for family, for silence. But tonight, she returns not for fame, but for music. Please welcome Maya Kovalenko." The applause was loud and long. People stood from their seats. When Maya walked onto the stage, dressed in a simple black dress, many gasped. She looked calm, but her eyes carried years of quiet pain and beauty. She sat at the grand piano, took a breath, and placed her fingers on the keys. Her first piece was her favorite, a part of Chopin's Nocturne. As the notes filled the hall, the audience fell silent. Her music was not just about skill, it was full of life, like it was telling a story. People could feel it in their hearts. Her hands moved gently, but the sound was powerful. Every note seemed to say something about loss, about dreams, about finding yourself again. After the chop, she played a piece she had written herself, a soft emotional melody she called Return. It was like a conversation between her past and her present. The audience could feel it. Many had tears in their eyes. Maya didn't need words. Her music spoke everything. When she finished, the audience stood again. Clapping didn't stop for many minutes. People shouted her name, cried, smiled. Flowers were thrown onto the stage. Maya stood, bowed quietly, and walked off without a word. She didn't need to say anything. Her heart had already spoken. Backstage, the director of the music academy came to her with tears in his eyes. "Maya," he said, "you've reminded us all why we love music. You've reminded us that even after years of silence, beauty can return." Maya looked at him and replied, "It never really left. I just stopped listening for a while." After the concert, news channels shared her performance. It reached millions of people. Social media was full of messages like this woman gave up everything, and now she's giving the world her music. She received letters from young musicians, mothers, retired pianists, and even people who had once given up on their dreams. They all said the same thing: "You gave me hope." But Maya didn't let the fame get to her. She stayed humble. She continued working part-time at the school, now not just as a cleaner, but also as the head of a new weekend music program. The school had given her a small room where she could teach piano to children. The room had a second-hand keyboard and a few wooden benches, but for Maya, it was enough. Every Saturday, children came to learn. Some were very young, barely able to reach the keys. Others had never touched a piano before, but Maya welcomed them all. She didn't just teach them how to play, she taught them how to feel the music. She told them stories through songs. When they made mistakes, she smiled and said, "Every wrong note teaches us something." The students loved her. They said learning from her didn't feel like school, it felt like magic. Parents were amazed at how quickly their children learned. Maya made them believe they could do anything. One day, a teenage girl named Sarah came to her class. She had been very shy, always looking at the floor. She sat in the corner, listening but not speaking. Maya gently invited her to the piano. "Would you like to try?" she asked. Sarah shook her head. "I'm not good at anything," she whispered. Maya sat beside her and placed her hands on the keys. She played a simple tune and said, "This was the first song I ever learned." "No, you don't have to be perfect. Just be present." Slowly, she guided Sarah's hands. The notes were shaky at first, but as the girl relaxed, the music became clearer. For the first time in weeks, Sarah smiled. From then on, she never missed a class. Moments like these made Maya feel alive again. Her heart, once full of sadness and silence, now beat with joy and purpose. She had found a new stage. It wasn't a big concert hall, but a small room filled with children and dreams. One afternoon, Mr. Hawkins came to visit her class. He watched quietly as Maya taught the children. Later, he said to her, "You know, this might be your greatest performance yet." She laughed softly. "I think you're right," he added. "Would you consider doing one more performance at the school? A final piece before the term ends?" Maya thought for a moment. Then she said yes, but this time I want to play something I wrote myself. The news spread quickly. Everyone was excited. This performance would be different. Not a famous piece, not a competition song, but something personal.
Ow.
From Maya's heart, the school auditorium was packed once again. Students, parents, teachers, even people from outside the town came. The lights dimmed. Maya walked onto the stage, holding nothing but a simple sheet of music. She sat at the piano and looked out at the audience. "This piece," she said softly, "is about losing something, then finding it again. It's about silence and sound and everything in between." She paused. It's called The Long Pause, and then she began to play. The music was slow, gentle, but deep. It was like the story of her life, starting with joy, moving into pain, then rising again with strength and hope. Each note felt like a memory. Each pause between the notes was like a moment of reflection. The audience sat in stillness, feeling every second of it. When she finished, there was no loud applause at first, just silence, a beautiful silence filled with emotion. Then slowly hands began to clap, softly, respectfully, then louder and louder until the entire room was standing. Maya stood, bowed deeply, and smiled. It's not because of the applause, because she had finally shared her full story. Not with words, but with music. The day after Maya's final school performance, the hall still echoed with her music. Students talked about it in every corner, replaying her notes in their heads, trying to describe the feeling they had felt during her piece, The Long Pause. It was more than just a song, it had become a memory, something they would carry with them forever. Some of the younger children told their parents, "I want to be like Miss Maya." Others said, "Her music makes me feel something I can't explain," but Maya didn't perform for fame or attention. She didn't even like being in the spotlight. She performed to share a piece of her soul. Her entire life, full of both beauty and silence, had been poured into those keys. Now that it was out in the world, she felt a strange peace. That Monday, she returned to her usual routine, wearing the same simple clothes and walking the same path to school. But this time, the way people looked at her had changed. It's not with surprise or pity, but with deep respect. They saw her not as the woman who swept the floors, but as someone who had lived a full and powerful life. One of the younger teachers, who had once made a sarcastic joke before Maya's first performance, approached her in the hallway. She looked embarrassed. "Miss Maya," she said softly, "I owe you an apology. I didn't know who you were. I judged you without even trying to understand you." "I'm really sorry," Maya smiled kindly. "It's okay," she replied. "Sometimes people don't see what's behind the curtain. That doesn't mean it's not there." The teacher nodded, holding back tears. "Thank you. And thank you for your music. It changed the way I look at everything." Maya's piano classes at the school continued to grow. Children who had never played an instrument before began showing up every Saturday, eager to learn. Some brought their siblings. One girl brought her grandfather, who used to play the harmonium and now wanted to learn the piano. Maya welcomed them all. Her classroom was not just about music. It was about connection, healing, and hope. Each student was special to her. She never compared them. She never rushed them. She understood that each person's rhythm was different. One boy, who had trouble reading notes, could memorize melodies by ear. A girl who was too shy to play in front of the class found courage when Maya played beside her, one hand on the keys, the other gently patting her back. One afternoon, after class, a boy named Zion stayed behind. He was about 10, quiet, and always sat in the front row. "Miss Maya," he said, holding a small notebook, "I wrote something." He handed her the notebook. Inside was a poem. It read, "When I hear you play, my heart learns how to speak. Even on my silent days, your music makes me feel not weak. Maya read the poem silently, then looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you for sharing it with me." Zion smiled shyly and ran off. Maya folded the page gently and placed it in her own music book. She would keep it forever. The local music academy where Maya had been invited to teach also welcomed her warmly. Her new role was not just to teach notes and scales, but to inspire. She mentored young musicians who had talent but lacked confidence. She told them stories from her past, not the painful ones, but the ones full of meaning. How she used to practice until her fingers hurt. How her mother would bring her tea while she played. How she once forgot her music sheet on the day of a big concert, but still played from memory. And how that became her best performance. Maya didn't pretend her life had been easy. She told them, "Music saved me. Even when I walked away from it, it waited for me to return, like an old friend." Many of her students began opening up about their own struggles. One had parents going through a divorce. Another had moved from another country and missed home. A girl shared that she was being bullied. Maya listened to them all, never rushing, never judging. Then she would place their hands on the piano and say, "Let's speak through music." Slowly, the academy began to change. The atmosphere was no longer just about competition and perfection. It became a place of warmth and growth. Maya's presence made the building feel alive in a new way. As the months passed, Maya received several invitations to perform at bigger events, city concerts, charity galas, music festivals. She turned most of them down, not because she didn't appreciate the honor, but because she had found where she truly belonged. Her stage was not always lit with bright lights. It was in small rooms, quiet mornings, and the hearts of her students. But there was one invitation she couldn't ignore. It came from the National Symphony Orchestra. They wanted to hold a special evening called Hidden Legends, a concert honoring musicians who had been forgotten, overlooked, or lost in time. They wanted Maya to be the main guest. They offered her the chance to perform one solo piece and one collaboration with the orchestra. Maya hesitated. Big stages still made her nervous, but she also knew the power of her story. Maybe sharing it on a larger stage would help others who felt invisible. She agreed. Preparations began. The concert was scheduled in a large city theater with over 2,000 seats. The hall was beautiful with golden lights, red velvet curtains, and a polished Steinway grand piano at the center. Maya visited it a few days before the performance and sat at the piano alone. She ran her fingers across the keys, thinking of her father, her mother, her childhood. The sound echoed in the empty hall. It felt like her past had come full circle. The night of the concert arrived. People filled every seat. The program had her name printed in bold. Maya Kovalenko, the music that returned. The crowd was a mix of young students, professional musicians, old fans, and new admirers. Backstage, Maya took a deep breath. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from emotion. A small photograph of her parents was tucked inside her pocket. She touched it gently and whispered, "This is for you." Then she walked onto the stage. The applause was thunderous. But she didn't wave or bow too long. She sat down at the piano, closed her eyes, began to play. The first piece was Moonlight Sonata by Beethoven, one of her favorites. The hall was silent. People leaned forward, completely drawn in. Her playing was not just beautiful, it was honest. Every note carried the weight of her life and the softness of her soul. Then came her second piece, her own composition called Echoes of Silence. It started slow, almost like a whisper, then grew into a powerful storm of sound and emotion. It told the story of being forgotten, of being alone, and of rising again. The orchestra joined her halfway through, lifting the piece into something even grander. When it ended, there was a long silence. Not because the crowd wasn't impressed, but because they were deeply moved. Then, one by one, people stood up. The entire hall gave her a standing ovation. Some clapped, some cried, some just stood in awe. Maya stood bowed with grace and looked up toward the ceiling as if saying thank you to someone far away. The concert was a huge success. Reviews praised her performance. People said, She reminded us that music is not about fame, it's about feeling. Others called her the soul of the concert, but Maya didn't stay for the after-party. She quietly returned home the next morning and went to the school, just like any other Saturday. Her students were waiting. She greeted them with a smile, sat at the piano, and said, "Let's begin." One of the younger children raised her hand and asked, "Miss Maya, are you famous now?" Maya laughed gently. "Famous is just a word," she said, "but being remembered, that's something special." Then she began to play softly, lovingly just like always. The students gathered around, listening with wide eyes and open hearts. Maya had come full circle. She had once been a girl full of dreams, then a woman full of silence. Now she was both a dreamer who had found her voice again. Not through applause, but through the simple joy of teaching others. She had learned that greatness isn't always about shining the brightest. Sometimes it's about lighting a candle in a dark room. And through her music, Maya had lit hundreds of little candles and hearts everywhere, and in the end, that was the greatest stage she ever stood on.